Why didn't Doakes suspect Brian like he did Dexter? James Doakes was not a man who relied on guesswork. He didn't second-guess himself, didn't hesitate when his instincts told him something was off. He was a trained hunter, shaped by years in special forces, hardened by a lifetime of seeing what most people couldn't stomach. And in all those years, one thing had never failed him: his gut. From the moment he laid eyes on Dexter Morgan, something inside him screamed that this man was hiding something. It wasn't just the way Dexter acted, it was the way he didn't act like everyone else. Most people had tics, flaws, emotions that gave them away. They got nervous under pressure, got flustered when accused of something, showed some kind of natural reaction when confronted with violence. But Dexter, he was still, too still. It was like he existed in a state of constant calculation, measuring every reaction before letting it show. And for Doakes, that was unnatural. What made Dexter truly stand out, though, wasn't just his lack of emotion, it was the subtle performance of trying to look normal. Doakes wasn't fooled. He could tell when someone was putting on an act, and Dexter's attempt at appearing like an average, quirky lab geek felt too intentional. The pauses before he laughed at a joke, the way he smiled, just a little too late, the forced enthusiasm when responding to people's stories. These weren't the mannerisms of someone socially awkward. They were the mannerisms of someone pretending to be human, and Doakes hated it. But here's the strange thing. While Doakes had his sights locked onto Dexter, convinced he was onto something big, he never spared a single thought for Brian Moser, the ice truck killer. Brian wasn't just another serial killer, he was the serial killer. The man Miami Metro had been hunting, the one leaving bodies meticulously arranged, each crime scene designed like an intricate puzzle. And yet, for all of Doakes' unshakable instincts, all of his detective skills, he never even considered Brian. While Dexter couldn't so much as breathe without Doakes watching him, Brian moved freely through the city, unnoticed, undetected, untouched. How? How did Doakes, one of the sharpest men in Miami Metro, completely miss the real serial killer in plain sight? To answer that, we need to break this down in three crucial ways. Why Doakes suspected Dexter so intensely while ignoring others. How Brian Moser operated in a completely different way than Dexter. How Brian deliberately used Dexter as a shield, ensuring Doakes never looked in his direction. Because in the end, Doakes was right about Dexter, but he was also completely wrong. James Doakes had a skill that few detectives truly mastered: the ability to sense a threat before it became obvious. It wasn't psychic ability, wasn't some supernatural sixth sense. It was years of reading people, picking up on body language, recognizing inconsistencies in behavior that most people ignored. And Dexter was riddled with inconsistencies. The first thing that put Doakes on high alert was the sheer artificiality of Dexter's persona. He was too clean, too polished, too rehearsed. While most people at Miami Metro saw Dexter as quirky but harmless, Doakes saw through the act. Every interaction Dexter had with others felt like it was being performed for an unseen audience. Each reaction calculated, each social exchange carefully designed to fit whatever image he was trying to project. To Doakes, it wasn't what Dexter was doing that was suspicious, it was the fact that none of it felt real. Then there was the way Dexter reacted to death, or more accurately, how he didn't react. Most detectives, no matter how experienced, still had emotional responses to violent crime scenes. Even hardened cops like Doakes himself had moments where the sheer brutality of a case weighed on them. But Dexter, he walked through blood-soaked crime scenes with ease. Not just with ease, with fascination. That was what made Doakes' skin crawl. Dexter wasn't just comfortable with death, he thrived in it. And yet, despite all these red flags, Doakes never considered Brian Moser, even though Brian was the one actually committing the murders. And that wasn't an accident, that was by design. Brian Moser was, in many ways, just as cold and calculating as Dexter. But unlike Dexter, Brian never had to pretend to be normal because he never had to be in the spotlight in the first place. While Dexter was constantly under scrutiny at Miami Metro, constantly interacting with people, constantly having to act, Brian existed in the shadows. This was what made Brian so much deadlier. He didn't need a disguise. He didn't need to carefully navigate social situations. He wasn't surrounded by people who might pick up on his lack of emotion. He was a nobody in Miami's police circles, just a simple prosthetist with no connection to law enforcement. And that gave him an invisibility that Dexter never had. Because he wasn't part of Miami Metro, Brian never had to deal with someone like Doakes watching his every move. No one was scrutinizing his behavior, looking for tells, questioning his reactions. He wasn't on Doakes' radar because he had no reason to be. But Brian wasn't just lucky, he was smart, because he didn't just avoid suspicion, he actively ensured that Dexter took all of it. Brian knew exactly what he was doing when he started his game in Miami. He wasn't just killing at random, he was sending messages, orchestrating elaborate crime scenes, leaving behind carefully placed evidence, all while toying with Dexter in the process. But what makes this so fascinating is that Brian knew Dexter was being watched. He knew Doakes had his sights locked onto his brother, and he used that to his advantage, because as long as Doakes was fixated on Dexter, he wasn't looking for anyone else. While Doakes was lurking outside Dexter's apartment, while he was watching every move Dexter made, Brian was free to move in and out of crime scenes, leaving behind his grotesque signatures without a single detective suspecting him. It was a brilliant, perfect strategy, and it worked. By the time Miami Metro even realized that Brian was connected to the ice truck killer case, it was too late. He had already gotten away with everything, and Doakes, he had wasted all his time watching the wrong monster. At the end of the day, Doakes wasn't wrong. His instincts were dead on. Dexter was hiding something, but he became so obsessed with Dexter that he failed to consider the possibility that someone else was moving unseen, and that was Brian's greatest weapon. He didn't have to be a genius to avoid suspicion, he just had to be invisible. And sometimes, the best way to hide in plain sight is to let someone else take the fall. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more Dexter content.